live from the House of LeMay Makeup and Dressing Room.
Here comes Amber. Stop what you're doing. Here comes Amber. She's just doing what she can. Here comes Amber. Cue the spotlight. Here comes Amber with 2 drinks in her hand. The matriarch of fashion, secrets to her glasses, you can't look away. Ask her, does she do it? There's really nothing to it. She's got that feminine game. If you have a party, or if you're feeling naughty, call up the House of LeMay. Here comes your favorite gal. Here comes your queen. Here comes the talk of the town. It's Amber Live tonight. The music starts playing. It's time for cabareting on Amber Live tonight.
Ladies and gentlemen, please turn off all cell phones and get ready for your host, Amber LeMay.
Hello. First, like, share, subscribe. You know what to do. Once you've done that, we can start the show. All right? 5, 4, 3, 2. Well, great. You've all done it. Now, no headlines tonight because we've had such a great show. So, Russell, come on in and we'll talk about it.
Hey, Amber.
Hey, Russell. Oh, I'm so excited for tonight.
You're looking very tigerous.
Wow. Oh, yes. Some may say cougar. Yeah. We got Carole Baskin on, but more of that. But first, I know we've got lots of people watching for the first time tonight. So tell them what to do.
Okay, so the best place to watch our show is on YouTube. It's at youtube.com/Amber Live, and we recommend you go over there and watch there because over there we are in full HD and you get to see the show large and without any, I would say wrinkles, but you'll probably see some more wrinkles because of it. But you'll get to see a great show there. You can watch us on Facebook, on Twitch, on Twitter. There are lots of places, but we recommend YouTube, and part of the reason we recommend that is tonight it's a pre-recorded show, so Amber and I will be over on YouTube answering questions and talking to people and chatting over there, so let's gather over there and really have our conversations there, and it'll be a lot more fun that way because you'll be able to talk with other people who are watching and dish on what's going on.
And while you're there, make sure you like and subscribe. You want to make sure you subscribe. Yes,
definitely like and subscribe there. And then also, I want to mention that we have a TikTok, and you can see it there. It's Amber LeMay Live, and we've got lots of stuff up there. We've got all kinds of other things that aren't on the show, as well as clips from the show, and it's a lot of fun. So go over there and join the TikTok community too. So, and you'll have a great time with Amber Live everywhere you go.
And what do you want to talk about now, Russell?
The people who help get us here, because it takes a lot to make this show happen. And we have a group of people called the Boostiers who support Amber Live, and everybody on that list has given of themselves to help us out, to keep us going, to get us to the point where we get amazing guests like Carole Baskin. Last week we had a Beatles episode getting ready for the Beatles docuseries by Peter Jackson that's coming up. We have some great guests lining up for the future. And so you can use Venmo at RJD Pro to send us some support, send us your love. And then if you, any amount's welcome, but if you give $25 or more, we'll send you a Amber Live sticker. For $100 or more, you get a sticker and a magnet. And for $200 or more, you get a sticker, a magnet, and a mug. And again, that's Venmo at RJD Pro. And, every bit that you help us out with takes a little pressure off here and allows us to do more. And gets us to Carole Baskin.
I know. So, Carole Baskin, I don't think we need any more introduction for the interview. So let's get part 1 started right now. I am so excited for this next interview. It's someone that we all met just a little over 18 months ago, and she came into our homes, our living rooms, because we couldn't go anywhere else. And we met Carole Baskin. You love her or you hate her, but she's here tonight to talk to Amber LeMay. Come on in, Carole Baskin.
Hey, all
Hello
you
there.
cool cats and kittens.
I was waiting for that. Cool cats and kittens, yes. And I see we are dressed to go out. We cougars have to stick together.
Yeah, I mean, we could go shopping together. You have amazing taste.
Well, thank you. I think so. As do you. All right. So, Carole, first of all, how are you?
I'm doing great, despite all of the craziness going on out there in the world. How about you?
I'm doing well. We've learned to adapt and survive. Maybe that's what we've learned from our animal friends is to survive. Carole, we know you from The Lion King, but you're more than that. So tell me, how did you get started with your love of animals and cats in particular?
The very first photo that my family has of me is my mother holding me and my father holding a kitten. And it wasn't until just recently when People magazine asked for photos of me when I was a kid that I went to my mother and was thumbing through the photo album. And so I had to scan them. So I had to take it out of the old sticky type photo album and I turned it over on the back and it said that the cat's name was Tiger. And I thought, oh my gosh, it was written in the stars.
Now, do you have memories of that particular cat?
I don't.
Yeah. So
No.
what was the first memory of a cat that you have?
The first cat that I can remember having was when I was about 8 years old. Her name was Smokey, and we lived in a trailer park, and she had a litter of kittens, and my grandmother convinced me that we needed to take her to the shelter with her kittens. And I didn't know at the time what that meant. I was being told that she was going to get this lovely home and all of her kittens were going to get great homes. And later on, I learned that most of the cats who enter shelters end up being killed due to overpopulation. And so from about the age of maybe 10 years old, I vowed to end that. And it made it my life's mission to protect domestic cats and kittens from being killed due to overpopulation. I never had any early fascination with wild cats and only ended up rehabbing and releasing native bobcats as an accident, which, every accident seems to lead to some other accident. But that's
let's travel that route from the trailer park in Texas to taking care of some of the wildcats. So what did you do? How did you leave Texas, or why did you leave Texas?
I was born at the San Antonio Air Force Base because my father was in the Air Force, but he was only in for one stint. So as soon as he moved back to Tampa, which I think I was like 3 years old at the time, I spent most of my time in either Tampa, Florida, or Charleston, West Virginia. We flew back and forth, or well, literally flew because my father was a pilot, but we went back and forth between those two states for most.
Why Charleston, West Virginia?
My father was the pilot for the governor of West Virginia, Governor Arch Moore. And so that was why we went there. But then he left there because the next governor that came in was Governor Jay Rockefeller. And he sold all of the state planes and bought helicopters, and none of the pilots could fly helicopters. So my father was out of a job. I was 15 when I left home, and I was going to set the record straight. So I went down, got a job at the governor's office, and was the secretary to the secretary for Governor Arch Moore. And my mission was to out him for what he had done, but I ended up loving my job and really wanted to stay there.
I'm sorry, you said you were secretary to the secretary of Arch Moore or Governor Rockefeller?
Governor Rockefeller.
Yes. Okay. So you left home at 15?
Yes.
What would prompt you to do that?
I was raised in a fundamentally Christian family where the belief was that if a woman was raped, that she had asked for it. And I had been raped when I was 15 at knife point by 3 men. And so I didn't tell my parents. I don't think I ever told my father. And I was in my 50s, I think, before I told my mother. But I felt ruined and I felt like I was not worthy. And my mother and I got into our first fight when I was 15. I was like the perfect child. My mother and I were best friends. I was cooking for the family. We had My father often ran businesses from home. He had a lawn care business and he worked as a private detective, and I worked alongside of him on all of those kinds of things. But when we got into a fight, she had accused me of having sex with this really nice boy that I was seeing. And I was having sex with other boys, but not that boy. And so,
Because he was nice.
yeah, he was
Probably gay.
really good in my life. And I was defending his honor. And she said, when I get home, I don't want to see your face. And I thought she meant ever. And so I packed up and moved out. And I've been on my own since I was 15. But, as soon as it was probably over a year, maybe 2 years before we reconnected. And we've been very close since then.
Well, that's good. That's good. So the three men who raped you, did you know them or?
I had a girlfriend from church she was a wildling and she was always in trouble with her family, and they would throw her out for periods of a time. And so she'd come and stay with me. And so she was staying with me at our house. We lived out in Odessa back then. And one afternoon, we were out wandering around, and there is like nothing to do in Odessa, Florida. It has a post office and like a little grocery store kind of thing. And that was it. So we ran into these three men that were out in their yard, and we got to talking to them, and we went inside. And I've never done drugs, but she was really into drugs. So they were getting high, and they were like playing the television really loud and the radio at the same time. And I just thought, God, why do people do this? This is just so weird. But she wanted to go back there later on that night. And so we slipped out of my room, snuck over there. And right as we got there, she said, "Oh, I need to make a phone call. I'll join you in a minute. Go on in." So I went in, and that was when they raped me. And I didn't find out until years later, when she got into a horrible situation with a man, and I was trying to rescue her from that. And she said, "I can't believe that you are here to help me after me selling you for drugs." And I didn't know until that moment that's how that had come about. So anyway, that was how I think everything happens in your life. It sends you down a different path. That definitely sent me down a different path.
Oh, my. All right. So you've worked for the governor's office. What happened? Where did you go to work after that?
So I was working in the governor's office. I had a man who was living with me who was just a constant drunk, always getting stoned. I was having to work sometimes 2 and 3 jobs to be.
Now, why was he living with you?
Because I felt like the devil I knew was better than the devils I didn't know. And I think that early, that sense of betrayal and not feeling safe in the world made me keep people around me that were extremely abusive to me, but I felt like they were probably better than what was out there if I didn't have that kind of protection. And so he was just constantly causing a problem at my workplace. And so I decided I was going to drive him down to Florida, dump him off at his mother's house, and get away from him and go back to West Virginia to my job, because I ended up really liking that job. And so I drove him down to Florida, and I needed enough money to get back to West Virginia. So I decided I was going to work a waitress job for a few days and then go back up there. And so I applied for a job, ended up marrying the person that I went to work for, which was my daughter's father, and then stayed here. I never did go back to West Virginia. So I went from working for the governor of West Virginia to working in the automotive department of a Zayres store, which is kind of like Target or I don't know what kind of stores they have where you are, but
we had Zayres, no longer, but we used to have a Zayres. Yes. Okay. So you're married to your boss there, working at Zayres. Then what?
So I was 17 when I married him. And again, it was trying, a misunderstanding with my mother, because she didn't want me living in sin with this man who was not my husband. And she said that I should marry him. And I thought, I've put her through hell with all of this stuff that had happened. And meanwhile, during this period of time that I was with him, I had ended up the first guy that I left home with, I had ended up in a car accident. I had ended up paralyzed. I couldn't walk for 6 months. And, I thought, my family has just been through hell with me. And if she wants me to marry this guy, even though I don't like him, I'm going to do it. And so I did. And it wasn't until I divorced him 8 years later, I think, and was talking to my mother. She was like, I never did like him. I just figured you would run rather than marry him. And so it was like, we need to talk more.
Well, in 2 years, you were raped by Night Point, sold for drugs. You became secretary of the governor of West Virginia. You were living with a drunk, messed up man, and then you were in an accident and you were paralyzed. And all before being 18 years old.
Yeah. It was you couldn't make this stuff up.
No.
Crazy.
No one would. You send that script in, and they go, "Nope, it can't happen. Can't happen." But we know that it did. All right, we're going to take a short break here, and we'll be right back and talk more about Carole Baskin. We'll get back to more of the interview with Carole Baskin. But first, you know what? We watched a lot of TV back in 2020. A lot. Trust me, I know, as does my couch. We first met Carole Baskin, Joe Exotic, and all the Tigers on March 20th, 2020. That's just a few days after the lockdown began. Timing is everything. Tiger King, Murder, Mayhem, and Madness became the 11th most watched show of 2020. What? Didn't everyone in the world watch it? Twice? Apparently not, because these are the top 5 shows watched during 2020. Crime, comedy, and a splash of compassion make up the list, and all the shows were streamed from Netflix. Coming in at number 5 is NCIS. There must be a lot of other people who'd watch Mark Harmon read the telephone book. Number 4, Ozark. Oh, yeah. Jason Bateman and Laura Linney and the rest of the cast are great. Season 4 is due to stream in January. Don't bother trying to reach me that weekend. Number 3, Criminal Minds. This show is just a little too real for me. Can't watch, won't watch. Number 2, Grey's Anatomy. Is this show still on? Is there still a Dr. Dreamy? And coming in number 1 as the top watched show in 2020, The Office. By far the most show watched. Who hasn't sat down to watch one episode and 3 hours later you still want more Shroot? This was on Netflix until last January and now can be watched on Peacock. Yes, it can. And that's this week's top 5. Okay, we're back with Carole Baskin. We've learned about her extremely, I don't want to say exciting, but interesting life up to the age of 18. And then she was married for 8 years. What happened to that marriage?
Well, I never did like him. And I remember being at a cat show. In fact, it was during this period of time when I was married to him, I was showing Persians and Himalayans at cat shows. And it was because I spent so much time in veterinary offices and dealing with cats that was how I first ran into the first bobcat that I ever rehabbed for release. So,
okay, time out. Let's go back. When did you start collecting, handling Himalayas? What was the other one?
Persians.
Persians. Tell me how that interest started.
So when I was 17 and I got married to Mike Murdoch, I had been working for him, but then he decided that he didn't want me out in the public. And he was extremely possessive and protective. If a guy even looked in my direction, he would just lose his mind. And so he wanted to keep me at home where I never went anywhere, did anything, but I couldn't stand to just do nothing. And so we started the Persians and Himalayans, and we were breeding them and taking them to shows. And so he was willing to have that little bit of exposure for me to the rest of the world. And I loved being able to get out of the house and go different places for the shows. So that turned out really great for me.
Where were some of these shows? Where was it just around there in the Tampa area, or was it else? Where did you travel for these shows?
This was all over Florida. I don't know if I ever went outside of Florida. I know I had some championships that were like Southeastern championships. So it could have been that I went to Georgia or Alabama for those. It's been so long, I don't remember. And I didn't know at the time that these cats they were bred to such an extreme, as far as like Persians had really flat faces and their eyes would tear all the time and they would have breathing issues. And that was why I was at veterinary offices. And that's, as I learned more about the species, or the breed rather, I was just like, this is wrong. And that was a big part of not doing that anymore, because I felt like it was just too extreme. It wasn't for the cat's best benefit. And I had a difficult time giving up the kittens. The idea is you breed champions and you sell the kittens for hundreds or thousands of dollars. And I always felt like nobody was going to give a cat a good enough home. And so that was always difficult. But as a result of being in veterinary offices, if a bobcat, a native wildcat, gets hit by a car, the vets can fix him up in 30 minutes or so. But then you're talking about months of rehab for their bones to heal. And so they would ask me if I would take these cats home and raise them up or rehab them and release them.
Okay. At one time, how many of the regular cats did you have at one time?
I think at the time that Mike and I divorced, we had 17 cats and 32 kittens. And at that time, I don't remember the exact amount, but I had less than $10 in the bank when we divorced and had no way of taking care of these cats. And so I was freaking out when that happened and started putting the cats into pet homes as quickly as I could. And he had taken all of the registration papers, so they couldn't be sold. They couldn't be used in shows anymore. And so they had to go into pet homes.
Oh, how sad. How sad. So you take in this bobcat. How do you take in a what does a bobcat need to be rehabilitated?
This was my first experience with bobcats. And so I'm thinking I had actually been involved with one in West Virginia as well. But this one the one I'm thinking of had broken its back leg, or maybe both back legs. And so it was kind of like paralyzed from the hips on down, but it could swing at you with the front paws. And if their legs are like, I don't know if you can see, if their legs are like, I can't get my fingers here. If their legs are like, there we go. Their legs are like this long. They can stretch them like this long. So they can come flying for your face. And it was like, no wonder nobody rehabs these animals. They're just vicious. And she had to be fed a couple of times a day. She had to be cleaned off because she couldn't clean up her own back end. And so I would have to wash her in the sink. And the whole time, bobcats are they have this scream that just makes your blood turn to ice. It is so frightening. And they're so angry, and I love that about them. They're just, they are so tough, and they are not going to back down from anything. And I think that they have been a wonderful role model for me to not back down. So,
what kind of apartment or house were you living in doing this with a bobcat?
We had a house, again, back out in Odessa. My parents had given us a house out there.
Okay, so you had some land, or at least some place for them to be, or to run or move around.
I didn't have really big runs for them. Once they got big enough to walk on their own, they were in a enclosed back porch. But the facilities that we have at Big Cat Rescue now are 5,000 square feet of runs, so that they can really build up their muscles and learn how to hunt, and if they're orphaned cats. But back then I didn't have those kind of facilities. So as soon as they were big enough to be up and on their own again, then I had to put them back into the wild, even though it might take them a while to kind of catch up, building up their muscles again.
You rehabilitated your first bobcat. How did that grow to something more?
So I continued doing that. It was maybe once a year, once every 2 or 3 years, these kind of things would come along. And so I was doing that throughout the period of time that we had lived there. And then it was when I was divorced. I had been divorced for quite a while. And Don and I, my next husband, we had met in 1981, when my daughter was she had just been born in 1980. And then we were business partners for, I forget, until 1992 when we got married. And so, or 1991 when we got married. So 10 years that we had been business partners, and I'd been doing bobcat rehab off and on during that period of time. But after we got married, we were buying llamas and we were turning them loose on big tracts of land.
Time out again.
Llama lawn care right now.
Bobcats to llamas. How did that happen?
The llamas are, my husband had a fascination for like goats, and he loved to hatch like fancy kinds of ducks, like wood ducks and stuff like that, and turn them loose. And so he would go to these exotic animal auctions, and what we discovered is that goats will jump on your car, they'll climb over fences. It's really hard to keep them contained. But a llama, you can pretty much draw a line in the sand and say, this is your territory, and they'll stay there. And so we were in real estate for a living and had been for many years. And so we would buy a big tract of land, and then we would turn the llamas loose on that tract, and they would clear about eye level. And then we could move them to the next piece of property. And they were great. I just love llamas. They just follow you around like a dog, and they're really friendly. People talk about them spitting at you, but I've never been spit on. And so we were buying llamas at this auction, and a guy came in with a 6-month-old bobcat. In fact, I have her picture here. And he said that his wife didn't want her as a pet anymore because she was growing up to be a bobcat. And the guy next to me started bidding on her. And so I leaned over and I said, when that cat grows up, she is going to tear your face off. And he said, I'm a taxidermist. I'm just going to club her in the head in the parking lot and turn her into a den decoration. And so I started crying, and my husband started bidding, and we probably paid more for that bobcat than anybody's ever paid for bobcats, but she was never going to get killed in that parking lot that day. And so she came home with us, and this is Windsong. Isn't she beautiful?
Yes.
She's so beautiful. So she is the true founder of Big Cat Rescue, because she had been born in captivity, which meant that was illegal to release her. And she had been declawed by her former owners, so she had no way, even if she had been born in the wild, to be released. And she was a wretched pet. She would lay on top of the refrigerator and wait for Don to open the door, and then she'd leap down on top of him and start pulling his hair out. My daughter was 12 at the time, and she'd chase her all around the house and terrorize her. We had a German Shepherd that was terrorized of her. And so instead of thinking, wow, this was a really dumb idea, my husband decided he wanted to find a mate for her, somebody that she could grow up with, that she wouldn't beat the snot out of. And so we drove up to Minnesota, and this guy said that he had kittens for sale. And when we got there, we took my daughter and a little friend of hers from school and a couple of pet taxis and drove up in an old van of ours. When we got there, there's no sign out front that says what this place is. We just walked in, and the flies in this place were so thick, we had to put handkerchiefs over our faces to be able to breathe. And there was just row after row after row of these bobcats, Canada lynx, and Siberian lynx in cages. And the guy's pulling out all these kittens and showing them to us. And I said, is there this big of a market for bobcats as pets? And he said, no, this is a fur farm. And when they get old enough in a year, we'll slaughter them for their fur. And as I started, it was really dark in there, so my eyes were kind of adjusting. And I saw in the corner, there was a pile of dead cats. And they had just cut off this little piece of belly fur, because that's the only part they use for coats. It's that white fur with the spots. If you think about like a queen's cape, how to have that white fur with the black spots, that's from the belly fur of a bobcat or a lynx. And it takes like 20 of them to make just a short coat. And so I felt like there was a train just racing through my head. It was so loud. I couldn't believe what I was seeing and hearing. And I burst into tears again. And I heard my husband say, how much for every cat here? And I thought, what are you, out of your mind? But we came home with 56 bobcats and Siberian lynx that day.
Oh my goodness! Oh, your kitty litter bill must have been a tremendous.
Yes.
So this was husband Don. What happened to Don?
I don't know what happened to Don. Don left the house one day and never came back.
Okay, that's the husband that was mentioned in episode 3, I believe, of Tiger King. We're going to take a short break, and we'll be right back to Carole Baskin to learn more things about Carole Baskin. right back. Oh, yeah, there's more coming up. But first, let's bring Russell in.
Hey, Amber. Oh, my God. I
That
hope
was
people
so
are
cool.
enjoying this as much as we are.
Oh, we recorded that a couple Saturdays ago, a Saturday afternoon, and she could not have been more gracious, more open, more everything. She was just a great person to talk to. Whether you believe her or not, I can't say. I honestly can't say.
Only she knows.
Or does she? Who knows? Who knows? All right, but we still got more coming up in the show. We got Rusty. We got more of the interview, but we also have Rusty Peen. And what's he talking about this week, Russell?
Rusty Peen is going on a search for a tiger kitty this week. He is the Peen King, I guess. For our new viewers, there's a whole world of Beaver Pond, and some of the characters will be stopping in tonight. You'll get to meet them throughout the show, and Rusty Peen is one of the more unusual ones.
Yes. And next week you'll get to see a whole bunch of them because we're having our Beaver Pond Thanksgiving show. So that's going to be fun too with songs and comedy, and you'll get to meet some of the people from the Hot Damn Trailer Park in Beaver Pond, Vermont. So that's next Sunday night, 8 o'clock Eastern. You're on Amber Live. All right. And what else do you got to talk about, Russell?
Well, don't forget, we have Rocco coming up too later on in the show. We didn't mention him. He is talking about his favorite tigers tonight.
That should be interesting. I'm looking forward to
that. Yes.
So we've got Rusty Pete and Rocco and more Carole Baskin interview. And one more point from you, Russell.
Yes, and don't forget the Bustiers. Thank you all. You all help us out, get us to the point where we're getting people like Carole Baskin on the show. Use Venmo at RJD Pro. And any amount you can send us is a huge help, and we really do appreciate it. That's what keeps Amber busy in her basement.
That's right. And the Burlington Police Department appreciate that, and the health department as well. So, all right, thank you, Russ. We'll talk to you later.
Every time I go to visit Upper Beaver Gash, I always think, why don't they have great shops like we do down in Beaver Pond? Well, now you don't have to leave the safety of your home and risk getting that pesky Beaver 19. You can shop at the Amber Live store right off the interwebs.
And it's a better shop than Peggy's Plump and Proud. Oh, but don't tell her I said that. She's still giving discounts to the Beaver Pond players for the costumes.
I like the great products like the coffee cups I drink my morning coffee out of, or my evening beers if I feel like getting all fancy.
Down at B&B Fix-It Shop, we use large Amber Live beach towels to lay out on the grass every day at $4.20.
And don't miss the Rusty Peen collection for all your peen needs, dude.
Ditto on whatever he said. I just love their shirts and hoodies. Oh yes, that they have at the Amber Live store. Oh, they keep me so cool in the summer and warm in the winter at the Amber Live store.
So shop at the best store in Beaver Pond, or better yet, stay on your couch, eat some pork rinds, have a beer, and order right now on amberlive.tv.
Let's get back to the interview with Carole Baskin. All right, we're back with Carole Baskin. She had just purchased, 65 bobcats in Minnesota.
It was 56.
56. And then took them back to Florida. How did you transport 56 bobcats from Minnesota to Florida?
Well, we only took the kittens because there was no way we could transport adults. And so we went into town and we bought every pet carrier, every bucket, every toolbox that we could drill holes into, anything that you could put a cub in, all the hay we could pile into these things to put them in, all of the kitten milk replacer and puppy milk replacer from the pet stores and from the grocery stores. And then, of course, the feeding supplies and all of that. Purchased everything that we possibly could lay our hands on to make this trip back to Florida. And then it was my husband, my daughter, her little friend from school. So these are a couple of 12-year-olds and me feeding these cats who had to be fed every 4 hours around the clock. And so we started calling and we were like, as soon as we get home, we're going to need cages set up. We're going to need volunteers. We're going to need all of this. And so we had a real estate business, which meant we had a lot of handymen and their wives and their kids. We had secretaries and their husbands and their kids. And so everybody was coming over to our house and sitting in a huge circle of chairs. And we would feed all of the kittens. You'd have to stimulate them because that's what their mothers do to clean them and allow them to defecate. And then by the time you got done, it was time to start over again because there were so many of them. So we were really sleep deprived for weeks until those kittens were weaned. And then the next year we went back and we bought all of the adults. And so we came back with 28 bobcats and lynx the following year. And then the third year we bought out another fur farm that had 22 bobcats and lynx. And so we bought out all of those. And by 96 or 97, we were trying to buy out all of the fur farms in Canada. And that was when I lost my husband, was in 97. So we were never able to complete that in Canada. But as a result, the fur industry lingered until about 2018. And finally, I think the fur industry is dead, but it took a long time.
How did your facility grow during that time?
Quickly. I lived on what we call the island back in 1992 when we rescued Windsong. And I call it that because we're surrounded by a creek, except for this little driveway that comes into my house. And it's only 5 acres. So after the first group of cats came in, we were like, oh my gosh, we need more space than this. And we went about 5 miles north to a piece of property that was 40 acres that we owned. And we started building cages for all the adults out there and have built so quickly. But back then we built these cages that were about anywhere from 12 to 16 feet wide and 10 to 24 feet long. And they might house a bobcat or 2 bobcats in those cages. But when my father came to work for me in 1996, what he started doing was building much larger natural enclosures. Those cages were on concrete, made it easy to spray them out, but it's not a good life for the cats. So my father started building cages in 1996. And as a result, now all of the cats have cages that are far in excess of 1,200 square feet per cat.
You say Don left one day, went to get a pack of cigarettes or whatever, and never came back. Now there was a lot of speculation in Tiger King that you had something to do with his disappearance. How do you cope with an accusation like that?
When it first happened, I didn't know what had happened because Don was involved with a lot of really shady people. He was dealing with the mafia in Costa Rica, loaning them money of all things. It's like, how do you loan the mafia money? But that's what his attorney down there said he was doing. He was, the whole time Don and I were together, he was always getting into trouble. And I felt like it was my life's mission to get him out of trouble for all of the stuff that he would do. But in addition to all of the things that just were normal bad behavior on his part, he was starting to act really, really weird in about 1996 or so, 97. And so I didn't know what it was. And one of my volunteers came to me and said, man, I don't know how you run this huge sanctuary and deal with a husband who has Alzheimer's. And I didn't know anything about Alzheimer's. And so I asked him, what are the signs of that? And he told me about I think it was his brother that was suffering from it. And so I went and bought a bunch of books on it, started reading everything I could. And I thought, yeah, this really sounds like Don, because Don would go out and he had cell phones back before they were popular, but he'd call me and say, I'm in a dumpster and I can't get out. Can you come get me? And I'd be, sure. Where are you? I don't know where I am, because he could barely read above a first grade level. And he knew landmarks, he'd be like, well, it's the one over by the store where we get the bread for the, that kind of thing. But a lot of times he wouldn't even remember where he was. And now he's down in some kind of a dumpster and he can't get back out. And so I'd end up driving all over town to all of his favorite haunts to try and figure out which dumpster he was in. So I'm having to drive up to each one, climb up, look inside. And it was getting worse and worse and worse. And yet he could tell me stories about his childhood all of a sudden that I had never heard, talking about his father being a drunk and that the mule knew he drove a mule that carried the caskets out to the cemetery. And so this mule knew the path back and forth, and his father would just ride on the thing drunk, passed out. But the mule was doing the work. And it was like, how is he remembering these things from so far back? And yet he can't remember what dumpster he's in. And dumpster diving was what Don did all day. I mean, apparently he was chasing women a lot too, but when he wasn't chasing women, he was dumpster diving. And you never ate anything that Don offered you because he found it in a dumpster somewhere. So I started trying to get him to go to a doctor. His people who were surrounding him were just robbing him blind. They didn't want him to get the help that he needed. And so they were telling him, oh, she's just trying to put you away. She's going to take all your money. And to my own detriment, I followed my mother's role in her marriage. You know, she was always the stable one. She was the one that had the lasting jobs. My father had a lot of interesting jobs, but he was never the primary moneymaker. But you would never know that from outside of our family. My mother's the one that held everything together. And she always gave my father all the praise and said that he was the person responsible for anything good that ever happened. And so I did the same thing with Don, even though, like I said, he could barely read. When I started investing in real estate, I would tell people, oh, he's so smart. He's such a great negotiator. He does all this. And he wasn't doing any of that stuff. He was working as a mechanic in the yard for the most part when he wasn't dumpster diving or chasing women. And so people believed that he had built that business. And as a result of his dementia, they were just stealing money hand over fist. And one of the people that was in Tiger King, I caught him at it. And he had gone up to Don and he said, hey, you remember that $2,000 that you owed me? And Don loved carrying big wads of cash and feeling important. And so he peels off $2,000 and he gives it to him. Well, just a few minutes later, that guy doesn't see me, but I see him say, hey, Don, you know that $2,000 you owe me? And Don's like, oh, yeah, I forgot. And he's peeling off $2,000 again. And it's like, these people were doing this to him all day, every day. And they didn't want me to get him the help that he needed because he was easy pickings for them. And so I finally got him to go to a psychiatrist, and they had diagnosed him as being bipolar in June of 1997. But he hid it from me. So I didn't know until after he disappeared that they had given him that diagnosis. They had asked me to take him to St. Joseph's to have an MRI done on his head. And so we went and we did that, a brain scan, but I hadn't gotten the results back by the time that he disappeared. And I had set up an appointment with a specialist who was an Alzheimer's specialist for later in August, but he disappeared before that appointment. So I don't really know what his dementia was, but I know that he didn't know who he was or what he was doing half of the time.
Oh, what a shame. What a shame. This is still an open case then, correct?
Yeah.
His body
We've
was
never found.
Never found. So how often are you contacted by someone who says, oh, I'm working on this cold case? Does that happen frequently, or do you expect it to happen some more?
Well, it happened a lot initially. And one of the things that was really upsetting about Tiger King is they interviewed somebody who was like, oh, she never talked to us after that in the sheriff's department. It was like, are you freaking kidding me? I have so many faxes and emails and letters going back and forth with them that I've shown those to the producers of Tiger King. They knew that I was having these conversations with them for years as we looked for Don. I did everything I possibly could. I had people coming to the sanctuary from all around the world, people who were like people that are interested in, not cold cases, but people that are interested in those kind of mysteries would come out to the sanctuary. I'd guide them all around. It got to the point where there were so many people who were tying up my time all day long, dragging them around the property, letting them stick their nose in every nook and cranny anywhere that they wanted to. It was finally, I was just like, you know what? I can't deal with this. I got a sanctuary to run. I can't be catering to these people wanting to amuse themselves. And so it was probably a year or two that I put up with it before I finally just said, no, stop it. But the only people who were accusing me of any wrongdoing were the people who were stealing from Don and the ones who were animal abusers. Because whenever there would be a discussion in the media about cub petting and whether or not this was bad for the cub or bad for the mother or bad for tigers in the wild, there's no argument that these animal abusers have for the things that they do. So the only thing that they could do is try to divert the media's attention and say, she killed her husband and fed him to the tigers, right? And now they're off on that and they've forgotten all about the tigers. And I think Tiger King did exactly that. It took what could have been a really good message to the world that we have to save the tiger in the next 5 years or we're going to lose them entirely. And it turned it into the freak show that it was, based on a bunch of animal abusers making false accusations against me.
All right, we'll get back to that freak show, what happened during that, and then what you've been doing since. And we're going to take a short break right now. We'll be right back with Carole Baskin. But wait, there's more Carole Baskin coming up. But first, you heard us talk about Rusty Peen earlier, and he's got his own special take on tonight's show. Take it away, Rusty.
Thinking and drinking with Rusty Peen.
Dude, welcome to another edition of Thinking and Drinking. I'm Rusty Peen, president of the Beaver Pond Guns and Tackle Society, and our mission is to arm more drag queens because a loaded drag queen is a safe drag queen. Dude, I've been watching that movie, The Tiger King, and it was all about tiger exploitation, and dude, one thing is for sure, it's a lucrative fucking business for sure, dude, so guess what, we're gonna fucking catch a tiger kitty today, bud, Dude, I got my Tiger King kitty Kate right here, because you gotta blend in. Tip number one, to catch a prey, you gotta look like the thing that it is that you're setting out for, bud. Okay, dude, so let's go. We're gonna see what's happening down here. This is the best place to catch tiger kitties in the wild, bud. Okay. Fucking swamp right here in Cape Town, USA. Okay, bud, here we go. Let's go see if we can catch ourselves a kitty cat right here. They got some rat kitties right here, so watch out for the rat. You ain't looking for rat kitties. You gotta know what's the kind of kitty that you want. Does it gotta look like this? Is it gotta be soft, and it's gotta be a kitty. Okay. No, there ain't a tiger kitty around here, dude. That's how you just to see if there's a tiger kitty. You just shout tiger kitty and then go. No, you ain't there, bud. Okay. Tiger kitty. Dude, there's a tiger kitty. One time I saw a tiger kitty down there, but it was chasing a rat kitty, and it got scared, dude. Because don't fuck around with a rat kitty. They'll drop kick you in the fucking throat, bud. Tiger kitty, dude. I don't know where your tiger kitty is. They're doing everything we can. This is how you catch a tiger kitty. They ain't around right now, dude. Because they're just gonna have to keep drinking. Tiger kitty. Okay, bud. That one guy from Tiger Kitty, he got killed and then they put his body into a bucket of ice cream. So fuck Baskin Robbins, bud. Okay, bud. We learned a lot today about how to catch a tiger kitty, even though we didn't find a tiger kitty. I'm Rusty Peen, the Tiger King. Peen.
Thinking and drinking with Rusty Peen.
I think I only caught half of what he was saying, but that's our Rusty Peen. You'll see more of him next week on our Thanksgiving show. All right, and here we have the final segment of our interview with Carole Baskin. All right, we're back with Carole Baskin, and we just started talking about what she called the freak show, which I think she meant the Tiger King. So, Carole, in watching the Tiger King, at first I thought, what is he doing that's different than what you're doing? And I'm sure other people have that idea as well. So, can you clarify the difference between his operation and yours?
I think it's interesting that you said that that was what you came away wondering is how was there any difference? Because I think one of the things the
Excuse me, at the beginning I did. At the beginning of watching it. And it changed over the time, but just explain the difference of what he was doing and what you're doing.
I think the producers were doing their absolute best to make it look like we were doing the same thing he was doing. And so what they were showing is Joe Exotic and all of these other people were breeding lions and tigers and pimping out the cubs and then showing cages full of these animals. And then they would show cages at my facility, and they would always focus in on just the little feeding box that we feed the cats in. That was where they kept asking me to stand, was just by that thing. Whereas our cages for those tigers, the smallest one we have is 1,800 square feet. And the biggest one was 2.5 acres. So it was like, why they wanted me right there by that tiny box, I didn't understand until I saw Tiger King. And they were trying to make it look like we were both breeding tigers, exploiting tigers, holding tigers in tiny cages, and that we were zoos. And so they would show people coming to all of these different backyard breeders' zoos. And then they used a clip from what we do once a year called the Safari Day. And all of our tours were guided tours where there would be like 20 people that come for a guided tour, and we would talk to them for an hour and a half and show them the cats, talking about why these cats don't belong in cages. And then at the end, have them go in and actually call their member of Congress, asking them to support our federal bill, which bans cub petting and phases out private ownership. When that bill passes, and I think that'll be this year, then we'll go out of business. And that's our ultimate goal. We don't want to be in the business of having to rescue big cats from horrible situations. We just shouldn't have horrible situations like all of this breeding for the cub petting. So in addition to what people were seeing visually in Tiger King, they would also, every time I would say something like tigers don't belong in cages, they'd line up 4 or 5 of these animal abusers and say, well, she's got tigers in cages. So the public came away thinking, well, she's no different than them. She's just being a hypocrite. I heard that from so many people. And nobody seemed to understand that we were, the reason they hate us is because we're trying to end the captivity of tigers. In fact, after Tiger King came out, my phone rang like every 2 minutes for 3 months of people screaming obscenities at me and saying how much they hated me and they wanted to kill me and they wanted to kill my family and they wanted to kill the tigers. And then I'd be like, why do you want to kill the tigers? And they'd say, because they don't belong in cages. And it's like, did you not understand that about me? Did you not get that at all about me? That's my whole life's mission is no more cats in cages. And they clearly didn't because of the way the story was told.
Fascinating. Do you have any regrets about being a part of Tiger King?
Well, if you ask me, I'd say no. If you ask my family, they'd say they would never do it again. But if you think about that, if somebody were saying the horrible things about you that they said about me, you just let that roll off your back because you know it's not true. But the people who love you, that is awful for them because they feel like they have to defend you. They get all upset because people think that about you. So I think it was much, much harder for my family than it was for me.
The second Tiger King is coming up, and there's a Netflix special with someone portraying you. How do you feel about that?
Well, the special I think is going to be on Peacock. That's the one by Kate McKinnon. Is that the one?
Yes.
So I just saw the first release, the sneak shots that they got of Kate McKinnon and Kyle, forget his last name, who is playing my husband, Howard. And people, of course, were asking, did they nail the look? And I was like, yeah, they really nailed the look. I don't know what the content is, so I have no way of knowing whether or not they're going to do what they said they were going to do. They said they were going to follow the Wondery podcast done by Robert Moore. And if they do, then I'm glad that they're doing that, because at the end of his podcast, he said, all these people were lying to me and telling me all this stuff, but here's what I found out to be true. And he laid it all out on the table. And that didn't ever happen in Tiger King. They never got to the part about saying, but all these people, they were lying to you. And they just never got there. I sat through the whole thing thinking, surely they're going to get there and say that. And they didn't. So maybe they'll do that in Tiger King too. But I sincerely doubt it, since I think they found a model that is very lucrative for them. And that model didn't have to involve the truth at all.
Since Tiger King, you were on Dancing with the Stars. What did you think when you got that phone call that said, hey, we'd like you to be on Dancing with the Stars?
I thought they were pranking me because everybody knows I can't dance. That was considered a sin in my family. So I never danced a step, not even at my own wedding. But when they called me, it came right on the heels of me being pranked by a couple of kids in the UK who said that I was on the Jimmy Fallon show, and they were doing this broadcast where they had clips of Jimmy Fallon asking cat-related questions, and then they'd have me answering questions. And so I thought I was talking to Jimmy Fallon. Turned out I was not. And they got like 7 million views for that. And it was really well done. And they let me talk about the issues of saving tigers in the wild. So I was happy enough with that. So when Dina Katz called me from Dancing with the Stars, I thought she was putting me on. One, it's like, your name is Katz? No way.
I was thinking, yeah.
But it really was. And she's the producer there, or one of the producers. And so what I wanted to be sure of was that it wasn't just some publicity stunt. I really wanted to get the message out there that these tigers are in trouble and that we need to work now to get this federal bill passed. And they said I could do that in the show. They do these little packages where they kind of talk about each one of the contestants. And they said that they have an amazing ability to reach a ton of media. So they said that they would line that up for me. And the entire time that I was out in Hollywood, if I wasn't either on the show or practicing, I was doing radio tours, print tours, media tours, where I got to talk about the issues. And this was all being provided to me by the people at Dancing with the Stars. And then even after I got scratched from the show, and trust me, they did the right thing because I could not be taught to dance, they still kept sending the media to me because they said they kept asking for me. So it gave me the opportunity to keep talking about what's really important, which is protecting tigers from the abuse of being bred for life in cages.
Well, I think one of the reasons they let you leave the show was they ran out of cat songs because I think you danced to Eye of the Tiger, What's New Pussycat, and something from The Lion King. So, what other cat songs are there?
Well, there's Stray Cat Strut.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
Cats in the Cradle. Yeah, no, they took me off the show because I couldn't dance. We didn't run out of cat songs.
So what's you say you want that bill to pass and that'll put you out of business? What are you going to do?
Then I can actually get back to what has been my mission all along, and that is protecting domestic cats and kittens from being killed in shelters. That is a much bigger issue. There's millions of cats involved in that. And I know that, and that's why I've always worked as hard as I do. And I've often worked 3 jobs at a time, is because I felt like the thing that I came here to do was to end that abuse, and that it was going to be very costly to do so. As it turns out, the big cat issue has been a very expensive one. It costs us close to $4 million every single year to run this sanctuary. So I have to be able to generate that much money and still be able to, I still work my real estate business and still hope to be able to help domestic cats as soon as we can end this captive problem with big cats.
And we'll add a link that people can reach you and donate or contact you for to contribute to your cause as well. Now, in the beginning, your first cat was a bobcat. Was that your favorite? And do you have a new favorite cat now? Or what's your favorite breed of cat?
My favorite species is still the bobcat, because they're little. They're only 20, 25 pounds here in Florida. In other parts of the country, they may get up to 40 pounds. But they will take on anything. They are not afraid of anything. I've had bobcats who have been hit by more than one car and still got up and walked away from it, just kind of shook themselves off. And they are they're so resilient. So I really love that about the bobcats. I have a personal favorite cat just by their personality, who happens to be a tiger, but and her name is Aria. But it's only because she had been so abused and had dealt with so much pain and suffering, and yet still is just this Zen creature that is like okay with everything in her world and never gets upset about anything. And I just love that about her.
Well, Carole, I cannot thank you enough for taking the time to talk to me. Your story is fascinating, and I hope we've helped shed some light on a different side of Carole Baskin. So thank you so much for being a part of Amber Live.
Thank you so much, Amber.
Thank you. What can I say? I will give you that address where you can contribute to Carole Baskin. Thank you. I just want to say thank you so much, Carole Baskin. I hope you people watching enjoyed it as much as I enjoyed talking to her. Put some comments in. I want to know what you thought. Well, an episode of Amber Live wouldn't be complete unless we had a visit from Rocco Zamboni. Take it away, Rocco.
Rocco Zamboni versus the internet.
Hey, Amber, how you doing? Let me tell you, that was some crazy interview with Carole Baskin. I was glued to my seat. Literally, I sat on Elmer's, but that's besides the point. So, I've been thinking, I watched that Tiger King show on that other network, and is he really that Joe Exotic guy? Do you think he's really the Tiger King? And Carole Baskin is the Tiger Queen? Well, I did some research to find out. These are some of the most famous tigers in pop culture history. Let's go through it one by one. One of my personal favorites, Hobbs from Calvin and Hobbes. Now this tiger was pretty good because he was stuffed. He wasn't real. Nobody could actually see him do anything except Calvin. Calvin had conversations with this guy, which makes me think that's very regal, If the kid, a 6-year-old kid, can have a conversation with a stuffed tiger, I'm thinking some good stuff. Now, of course, there's Shere Khan from the Jungle Book. This tiger did stuff. I don't know what, because I never read a Jungle Book or saw the movie. Personally, I think the one that should be at the top of everybody's list should be Tony the Tiger. That's right, Tony the Tiger, the guy that hawks cornflakes. Granted, it's not just cornflakes though, right? It's Frosted Flakes. Now, Tony the Tiger with his own proclamation saying, "They're great." Come on, he says it with such authority and regality. You know these things gotta be good. Every single one of you out there has had Frosted Flakes once in your life. I guarantee it. Personally, I think he might be the Tiger King. But, we'll see. Of course, we can't forget about Siegfried and Roy's 2 white tigers. Now, what makes these tigers so great? Sure, they're up on stage night after night jumping through hoops and stuff. But the fact that one day they said, "Enough, I'm done, I'm eating this guy," and he did. Come on. Nothing's better than that. That's something a king would do. So I think those things are way up top to be Tiger Kings. Now, before I get some hate mail, or any mail, because I never get any mail, I only get the female, let's not forget about Tiger Woods. This guy's a golfer. You would think, oh my God, Tiger, you're putting me to sleep. But no, he hits balls so far that women drop their pants. It's unbelievable. The guy marries a hot model. Wow! And still, it wasn't enough. I personally can understand that, Tiger, I mean, those nights we hung out together, I see where you're coming from. So, Tiger Woods, possibly Tiger King. And he's got a club. So, that's the list of famous tigers. I don't know. Any one of them could possibly be king. Joe Exotic, maybe you're a king, maybe you're a prince, maybe you're a duke. I don't know. But the point is, you out there, you decide who do you think would be Tiger King. All right? This is Rocco saying, "You're great." Don't give me any problems with that. I tried my best. You do it.
Love that Rocco.
Thanks, Rocco. You always really do make me laugh. Wow, what an episode of Amber Live. I hope you enjoyed watching the interview as much as I enjoyed performing the interview with Carole Baskin. And it couldn't have happened without all the work that Russell puts in, making the contacts, editing, and throwing it all together and presenting it to you. So thank you, Russell. Thank you, Carole, for making it happen as well. Well, next week is a Beaver Pond Thanksgiving. You'll get to meet and see some of my friends from the Hot Dam Trailer Park in Beaver Pond, Vermont, as we celebrate this great holiday. That's next Sunday, 8 o'clock Eastern. I'm going to be there. Hope you will be too.
Wow, Carole Baskin, the voice of Simba. No. Oh, that's right. She was the voice of Scar. No, that's the Lion King. This is the Tiger King. What? Didn't you even watch the show? I watched right up until Amber came on screen, and then she puts me right to sleep. You know that always happens.